has certainly deepened quite a bit, and we'd like to thank you publicly for that. Thank you to my wonderful parents-in-law for coming in from Israel. You've already made such a big difference the last few days, and we are very much looking forward to seeing you and being with you the next few weeks. And most of all, I'm really overflowing, filled with gratitude to Hashem, to the Creator, for helping us bring this child into the world. In that vein, I'd just like to share a quick thought I had on Dayenu recently. So people, Dayenu, we say on Pesach, we thank God for all the steps and the miracles that He did for us on our way out of Egypt. And we say each step, would have been enough. And one of the famous questions is, would it really have been enough? If God took us out of Egypt and brought us to the Yam Suf, to the sea, but He didn't split the sea and the Egyptians killed us, would it have been enough? And there are many steps which one could ask a similar question. And there's a number of answers, good answers, but recently I was thinking of a different answer in light of throughout the pregnancy, certainly through the labor, the delivery. It's more than once I've had the thought that, like, this is unbelievable. This should not happen. It doesn't make any sense. The miracles that are involved, like every step of the way, as the child grows and is born, are really almost incomprehensible. And sometimes it just feels like it would have been enough, and obviously it would not be enough. Just even from the fact that a bunch of cells are able to implant into the uterus, that this placenta grows and becomes a feeding source for the baby, and of course that would not be enough. There's the miracle that as the baby is born, all of a sudden something which would kill the baby, God forbid, outside into this world, with, for example, a fluid inside their lungs, is what keeps them alive inside. And within 1 minute, they manage to somehow make this transition. And you could go on and on. And of course, if just the fact that there's a placenta, that's not enough. We need all the miracles that God gives us. We need all the miracles up until this stage and really going forward to keep the baby healthy. But sometimes it's just so immense, the magnitude of each miracle and how incomprehensible it is, that I've just thought, like, that'd be enough. It's not because it really is, but because you just can't ask for more. That miracle in of itself was so great, you can't possibly think of asking for something more, for the next step. And perhaps that's also what it was with Bnei Yisrael. Yes, it would not have been enough if really God did not split the sea. But to have been brought out of Egypt after all these years of servitude, who could have thought of that? To bring the plagues on the Egyptians, they couldn't have possibly imagined such a thing would happen. How could they have possibly even think to ask God for something else? That itself was something that was so great of a miracle. There was nothing more they could ask for. I'd like to speak a little bit about the name. Certainly, on one level, we were very much, had in mind the fact that we have now a little Kohen in the world, and of course, so his ancestor Aharon a Kohen. We learn in Pirkei Avos, Ethics of the Fathers, that it says we say about Aharon a Kohen, that he was Ohev Shalom, Rodei Shalom, Ohev Esabrios Umekarvon the Torah. That he loved peace, he pursued peace, he worked to create peace, and he loved all the creations, all the people, and he brought them closer to Judaism. And really this, and through that he made the Jewish nation in the desert, a better people. And it's our hope and our prayer that our little guys will grow up and be able to follow in those footsteps. Just being someone who, by his very being, is someone that brings peace to those around him, and brings those people closer to God, making the world a better place. And of course, one of the the Kohen's job was to serve in the Beis Hamikdash, in the temple, and one of the primary avodos of the service in the temple was to light the menorah, and the menorah is to light up the world, to bring light into the world, and that really follows in the same theme that we hope for our baby to be able to follow through. And I say this only with rishus of my wife, but our baby is apparently actually already on board with all this, as it was last week, right after candle lighting, as Roni was saying, the Zakeni Meir Metzolam, that our water broke and the baby started his journey. The baby, though, is also named after my Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Aharon Lichtenstein Zecher Tzadik Livracha. And I know a lot of people here might not be as familiar with Rav Lichtenstein, and I would just like to try to give some semblance of an idea of who he was, though certainly it's impossible to do, certainly not in a mere few minutes, but just a few anecdotes. So his hasmada, his diligence in learning, was legendary. There's many people who could tell over the times that they went over to ask him a question, and they would stand there and wait for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, for 20 minutes, right in front of him, and he didn't notice. He was not ignoring them. He didn't notice. He was so immersed in his learning, he simply didn't notice. Once he finally did, he would welcome them very graciously. But he was very connected to that which he was learning. And one of my other Rebbeim told a story that going back, I don't know however many years, 40, 50 years, I guess, I think, when Rav Lichtenstein was only about 30 or something. So they were going to have a summer kollel. It was going to be 8 weeks, I don't know, wherever it was, like just a very small group of guys. So it's a very high-level group. And so Rav Lichtenstein said, you guys can choose what we're going to learn. Just let me know. So they thought about it. They went back and forth. Eventually, they chose what very rarely learned Masechta and Kachim. I forget which one right now. And on the spot, Rav Lichtenstein said, oh, that's wonderful. That's fine. He pulled out a paper and he wrote out, he spent the next however many minutes writing out the Makoros, the sources that they were going to learn for all of the sugyas for the next 8 weeks in this obscure Masechta in Kachim. And as Rav Tabor, who said over the story, said at the time, it was clear to everyone there that the same thing would have happened no matter which Masechta that they said. He was ready to give them the Makoros for whatever they wanted to learn, whatever Masechta it was for the next 8 weeks. His yashrus and his anivus, his integrity, and his humility, I heard from Aharon, one of the teachers in Yeshivat Shalavim, that he once was on a plane with Rav Lichtenstein, and afterwards he contacted a friend of his who was a Rebbe in Gush, which is where Rav Lichtenstein was the Rosh Yeshiva, and he said, I don't mean to be disrespectful at any or anything, but I feel like perhaps the yeshiva should make greater efforts to, when Rav Lichtenstein's traveling, to help him out. He's already an older man. This was when he was in his 70s, and he was not doing this so well. And he was sitting in economy class. He said, maybe not first class, but business class, something, economy plus. Maybe the yeshiva should really, he's one of the Gadol Yisrael, it's not really befitting him. So the Rebbe's response, he said, you don't know how many times that we've tried to convince Rav Lichtenstein to sit in a higher class, to give him a more comfortable journey. He won't allow it. He refused it. He says, why use the yeshiva's money for this? It could be used for so many greater things. And his stories abound on that, and as well as the next little theme, his mitos. So I'm going to share a story that maybe fits with the theme of the day. This one I only heard more recently, actually, that he once received a letter from a woman who was very much pregnant, and she told him that she was traveling on a bus from Gush Etzion to Yerushalayim, and there was no seats on the bus, and she said there was a number of students from the yeshiva and no one got up to give her a seat. So apparently, a day or two later, Rav Lichtenstein got up in the middle of morning seder, unannounced. And he stopped morning seder. It was apparently the only time that he did that in 40 years. And he gave a Mussar Shmuz. He said, I said, how could people do this? Whatever he said. And he said, if he knew who any of the guys were, he would have no hesitation asking them to leave the yeshiva immediately. It was something that to him was incomprehensible, that you could be someone sitting and learning Torah, someone who was a part of the yeshiva, but it did not translate to your day-to-day life and how you interacted with others. So what stood out to me, though, was his davening, his prayer. And I've written this previously, but I'll never forget the week, right when I got to yeshiva. You can imagine someone comes from high school, they're in this place. I came, there's no one from my high school. There's 400 students in yeshiva, 4 in language. So you're trying to adjust to a lot of things. And just a week in, Rav Lichtenstein davened for the Yamud. He led the services as it was the yard site for one of his parents. And the moment he started davening, it's very impossible to describe the feelings, but there was a certain feeling that you're just standing in front of God. It was that awareness that you should have, at any prayer. But with him, it was clear that he was standing in front of God and really brought that awareness to the entire room. Again, it's really impossible to describe, but the analogy for me was that it really felt like a tefillah on Yom Kippur. And this happened actually 4 times in the month of Elul, because he had both parents' yard sites in Elul, and he davened on the Shabbos beforehand and on the yard site itself. And it was essentially an Elul which consisted of 4 Yom Kippurs in preparation for the actual day of Yom Kippur. And I recently heard a story which, in almost the most eerie of ways, really served as an affirmation from Rav Lichtenstein himself, that this was in fact the way he lived his life. In his later years, he unfortunately suffered from a degenerative terminal disease, and in his last year or so, his cognitive capacities were greatly diminished. And so oftentimes when someone is at that stage, they no longer have as much control of their regular faculties, and in a certain sense, like their exterior is stripped away, and you almost see the core of the person. And so one day, it was a regular weekday, he had an attendant, an aide, who would help him put on his tefillin and help him with everything. Among other things, he helped him with put on his tefillin. And so this day, Rav Lichtenstein said, no, not putting on my tefillin. So the aide, he's not Jewish, he's Filipino, but he knew this didn't make sense. So he tried again, and Rav said, no, not putting on my tefillin. So the aide went to go get Rav Lichtenstein's wife, the Dr. Tova Lichtenstein. She came in, and she said, it's the time to put on your tefillin. It's the morning. He said, no, it's not time to put on the tefillin. It's Yom Kippur. So she said, I can only imagine, so finally, not disrespectful at all, some people here understand. You can imagine, Aharon, it's not Yom Kippur. And he said, it's a Tuesday. It's the morning. It's time to put on your tefillin. He said, no. I know calendarically it's not Yom Kippur. And this was a few months before he passed away. I know calendarically it's not Yom Kippur. Existentially, it is Yom Kippur right now. And for someone who clearly he was no longer in his regular element, for that to be what came out of his mouth, in a certain way, speaks more, I think, than anything else anyone could have observed or said about him during his lifetime. So the question remains, what exactly does it mean? What's the idea behind naming a baby after someone especially after Adam Gadol, such a great leader of the Jewish people. And I'm sure there's many good reasons. I'd only come to add my personal thought. I've noticed a number of times over the years when I'm walking with my father, and if there's someone else there, and someone else gets to talk to my father about whatever he might be doing at the time, and if he gives some sort of compliment or comments in some vein about what some accomplishment of my father's, my father will invariably say, usually, please God, one day Chaim's accomplishments will surpass mine. And I'm sure he said the same when he was walking with Matis over 20 years ago. And the truth is, while the plain meaning of that certainly is clear, it often left me puzzled. Why exactly see one's accomplishments through the prism of your children's accomplishments? Where exactly did this desire for, specifically for your child not to just become someone great, but to become greater than yourself? And I don't know exactly what my father was thinking. Perhaps he could share with me later. But I noticed myself, even before the baby was born, I almost started having these thoughts myself. And when we were thinking of naming him after Reb Lichtenstein, so on the one hand, you think that it should become like Reb Lichtenstein, but without going into more thoughts, Torah sources also why I think it would support. It's not necessarily, certainly not reasonable, but and I don't even necessarily think the proper expectation. But yet, I still had very much this feeling that he'd be greater than myself. And perhaps I think that sense comes from this feeling of inadequacy when thinking of yourself, vis-a-vis your role models. The people that you strive to live your life like them, and you know that you're nowhere near. And that's a given. But even to the extent that there's things, say, after Lichtenstein passed away, there's things that I just wanted to take upon myself. Not to be Reb Lichtenstein, not to be like Reb Lichtenstein. As something that I was well aware, for better or for worse, is not within reach. But there's just things I want to take upon myself. And unfortunately, I stand here, things that I was certainly capable of doing. And I stand here today, and I recognize my shortcomings. I was not even necessarily able to live up to that. And everyone, we keep trying. But I think, at least my thought is that the child being, to a great extent, certainly at this stage of their life, an extension of yourself, the hope is that the baby Aharon, can help sort of close that gap. There's this gap between what you know that you can be and where you are. I think the hope is that the child is able to go and grow and accomplish so as to close that gap between the strivings and the Adam Gadol and between where we're holding right now. The second name was also not just the second name was also named after Ronit's grandfather, Grandpa Mort. And I actually asked my father to say a little bit about him, as I never had the privilege to meet him, but just to share that which I have become aware of over the last year plus. He was someone that was always exuding joy, always very happy to be around his family, especially to be around his kids, and in that sense also really lived up to his own name of bringing light to those around him. And we know he would have loved to be with his great grandson. Today, we remember all our grandparents who are unfortunately not able to be here with us today. Also among them, my grandmother, who was just right around a couple of days ago, was 6 months after she passed away. We have all the grandparents who are not able to be with us today. We know they're here with us in spirit. And it's another thing that we certainly feel very connected to Grandpa Mort through this time of our lives was that he was someone who was really passionate about Israel. He was alive as Israel became a state, was always a tremendous supporter of Israel. And as the baby is going to be, when we figure out all the bureaucracy, hopefully an Israeli citizen someday soon, that's also something that would make him so proud.